What is going on, YouTube community? Thank you for joining me today for the Week 1 Draftkings lineup recap. Basically, I want to be doing this every single week on Monday or Tuesday, looking at how my cash game lineup went the previous week, and refine the process, see what went right, what went wrong. Did I get lucky? What did I miss? What did I hit? All that sort of stuff. Because I think it's really important to look back and see what your thought process was on all these players, and if you were right and if you were wrong, and to continue doing the right things and to refine the process for the things that you did wrong, and so you don't make those mistakes again. So that's basically the basis for this YouTube video here today, and I'm just going to run down the list, QB to defense, and basically break down every single player and the process that I had on them last week, and if that one ended up working out. So we can just get started, get right into it. So the first one is quarterback Carson Wentz. 21.7% owned in this double up that I played, only 23 people. I'm not a huge cash game player, and so it's just I have one lineup, one cash game double up, and that's all I'm good with. And as you can see, I came in first place in this one, 214.42 fantasy points total. So yeah, Carson Wentz, 21.7% owned in this double up, finished with 28.02 fantasy points. Pretty solid output. I think that was on the higher end of what I expected from Carson Wentz against the Redskins this week. It was really nice to play him $5,700 this week, and I think a lot of the bigger name guys were also on him just because he was so cheap. And not like in the sense that like he was like below 5,500, but when you compare him to other guys like Phillip Rivers or Lamar Jackson or Pat Mahomes and Cam Newton, guys like that, like Carson Wentz at $5,700 giving you 28 fantasy points, that was perfect. That's more than what I expected, honestly. I knew that he would have a really good chance to have a really good game. He did well against the Redskins historically in his career, and basically all I'm looking for is like 22 to 25 fantasy points from my quarterback would be fantastic. But he finished out with 313 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, got you the 300-point bonus. That's exactly what you're looking for out of Carson Wentz, and the Eagles' offense is kind of back even after their slow start. 2 long bomb touchdowns to Deshaun Jackson really amplified things, and kick-started that Eagles offense into gear. So really happy with the decision to go with Carson Wentz. I think he was a pretty chalk quarterback, other than Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Cam Newton, guys like that. But yeah, so solid pick there, I think. Carson Wentz there at quarterback. Looking at the running back position, I'm gonna skip and go to Christian McCaffrey. 26.1% owned here. Basically, this one is the classic set and forget. Just don't overthink this one. Christian McCaffrey was solid. He was the 3rd most expensive running back on the slate behind Barkley and Zeke. But I think that he offered basically the same ceiling, if not more, and actually, did outperform the other two. And that was namely in part due to the fact that he is probably the safest running back in terms of PPR value, in terms of receptions, and then also what he adds to you on the running game. Zeke Elliott and Barkley, of course, are also fully just as capable of putting up the same numbers. But McCaffrey, looking at what he was going to do against the Rams this past week, one of the highest scoring totals on the week. I know that Vegas also saw it the same way, over a 50-point over-under. So basically, I was just looking at Christian McCaffrey, and I am always about paying up for running backs, because I think that the elite running backs at the top are a lot more predictable on a weekly basis, given that their touch count is going to be high, and that they're game script dependent and everything, and especially the guys who are capable of doing things both ways in the rushing and the receiving game, like Christian McCaffrey, are the guys that you want to target. So now that was basically very solid. 45.9 fantasy points. It's a fantastic ceiling game for Christian McCaffrey. 2 touchdowns, 81 through the air, 128 on the ground, 10 receptions, got you the 100-point rushing bonus, almost got you the 100-point receiving bonus, which would have kicked him over 50 points, which would have been insane. That's basically, it was kind of easy there with Christian McCaffrey, and better than going with someone like Saquon Barkley, who I favored McCaffrey to Barkley just due to the matchup and what I saw from the New York Giants, and what I thought would be the New York Giants offense, and we'll get to that in a minute with Evan Engram here. But yeah, moving on to RB2, Chris Carson, 21.7% owned here, 25.1 fantasy points. And, Carson was one of the guys that I really wanted to get into my lineup at $5,700 on the week. That was kind of disrespectful in my eyes. Chris Carson, to me, and still is, as you can see, is the clear workhorse running back for Seattle, much to the dismay of Rashad Penny truthers. And he is, going to continue to be that way. And then there was talk of them, wanting to give Chris Carson more volume in the receiving game, which was already going to be, just the cherry on top for the volume that he was already going to get. And it proved that way in week 1, 6 receptions for 35 yards and a touchdown, then added an additional 46 and 1 on the ground. 1 fumble, so he could have had even a nicer day and if he didn't do that. But yeah, 25.1 fantasy points from a running back who is $5,700. That's exactly what you want, and that's exactly what I was looking for out of my RB2 spot there from Chris Carson. I'm going to bump down to flex because I had Dalvin Cook just to finish out the running backs. 61% owned here. And at $6,000, I think he was the chalkiest play of the week, top to bottom, regardless if you had him in cash or GPP. It was just way too easy to plug him in, as your RB2, RB1, or flex or whatever at $6,000. The volume that he was going to receive was always going to be there. You wish that he would have gotten a little bit more on the receiving game. He only had 2 receptions for 9 yards, but I think that's actually going to be his lowest receiving production game of the season. I think he's more of the 3, 4, 5 reception per game type of guy. And but he got it done on the ground, 111 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Got you the 100-point bonus as well too, for a total of 29 fantasy points. So that was just chalk hitting right there. That's basically, there's nothing more to say on Dalvin Cook there other than just chalk hitting. Moving on to the wide receiver position. This is one that the process for me is going to have to be refined. I'm not saying that this is a hit or a miss necessarily on all 3 of these guys. We'll get to them each individually, but when it comes to my lineup building and how I like to build lineups, like I said, spending up at running backs because of the predictability for fantasy points based on their volume and the amount of opportunities that they're going to get on a weekly basis, game script independent. That usually leaves me at the wide receiver position in the mid $5,000 range. Anywhere, I could spend up and get a guy closer to 6,000 or just over 6,000 like Chris Godwin, and then balance him out with a guy at or around $5,000 like D.D. Westbrook here. So that this is going to be, I think, my hit or miss weekly on whether or not, if I really miss on wide receivers, I think that's what's going to be the killer for a lot of lineups that I'm going to be putting out here as the season goes on. But if I hit on them, I think that's where the ceiling for my lineups are going to be. And if they're right where I want them in that 13 through 16 or 17 point range, that's exactly where I want my wide receivers to be. Nothing less than 10 points would be ideal. Then that's just perfect. That's right where I would want them. So looking at these guys individually, so Tyler Boyd, 17.4% owned, finished with 8 receptions for 60 receiving yards. And the reason why I like Tyler Boyd this week, and one of my later picks after I subbed in Chris Carson, I originally had Tony Pollard in there as well too. But I was able to move up to Carson and then move into Boyd at my wide receiver spot. And the reason why I like moving Boyd and I like the Carson Boyd combo is because of how I believed that game was going to go. I thought Seattle was going to jump out in front pretty quickly, and I thought it was going to be on the back of Chris Carson, or at least the running game of some sort. And Carson would be, the focal point of that. That would cause the Bengals to have to throw a lot more than what I think that they initially would anticipate. Obviously Joe Mixon got hurt and ended up leaving the game, but that wasn't something that I predicted, nor even want to try to predict. But that certainly helped cause them to move more into the passing game even more. And so, Tyler Boyd, 8 for 60, obvious wide receiver 1 with AJ Green out. I think that was a pretty solid call with him, just because of the volume that he was going to receive. You would have liked to have seen him get into the end zone. That was John Ross doing that though, which is unfortunate. But this is exactly the type of output that I would have liked from Tyler Boyd. I'm not going to call it, a huge hit per se, but it's not a miss either. It's that Tyler Boyd. That's what I was looking for out of him. Moving on to Chris Godwin, wide receiver 2, 39.1% owned. A very chalky wide receiver. As a lot of people had a lot of expectations for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense and this San Francisco Tampa Bay game in general, thinking that it was going to be a high-scoring offensive matchup with two bad defenses and such. But Godwin, I'm chalking this up actually as a miss. And the reason why I say that is because I thought that he was going to be involved much more. I didn't account for Jameis Winston actually not being good, which I think a lot of people didn't account for. And I think, looking back on it, of course, hindsight is 2020, but looking back on that, I really wish that, we would have predicted that Jameis Winston was not going to be magically fixed by Bruce Arians over the course of a summer. We know what Jameis Winston is, and we know that Bruce Arians, his history with quarterbacks, yeah, they're great, but look at the quarterbacks that he had. He revitalized Carson Palmer, yes, but Palmer was already significantly better than Jameis Winston throughout his career. Andrew Luck and then Ben Roethlisberger, none of those are even, remotely close to what Jameis Winston is right now. They're all so much better. And so to think that Winston would magically become something different than what he has been throughout his career already, different than just a guy who has an affinity for throwing interceptions and, struggling at times, it's just something that I wish that, I think myself and a lot more people really wish that we had taken more into account there. So I'm actually chalking Chris Godwin as a miss because he only had 3 receptions. I believe he was only targeted 5, maybe 6 times. He was saved because of his reception touchdown, which is really nice. He would have had, without that touchdown, he would have had single-digit fantasy output, which not that great of an output, which is why I'm chalking it up to a miss because that receiving touchdown really helped bounce him up into the 14 range, which is where I want him and where I would have liked him, but I would have liked him to get there or around there, kind of similar to how Boyd did, and then the touchdown on top of that to spice it up and get into the 20-point range. So that's why I'm chalking him as a miss, and something that I want to keep an eye on as we move throughout the entire season is improvement from Jameis Winston and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. They're not going to be this bad all the time. He's not going to throw interceptions and 2 pick sixes in a game. And, I know about the 2 touchdowns from Cameron Brate called back. I know about all that stuff. It's just, I really would have wished that he was targeted more, I guess, is basically what it comes down to, and that Winston didn't struggle as much. So that's why I'm chalking it up as a miss. Last in at the wide receiver position is D.D. Westbrook. He finished with 14.2 fantasy points, again, right where I would like my wide receivers to be. 5 receptions for 30 yards and the touchdown. Similar to Chris Godwin, the touchdown really helped out. Otherwise, he would have had a single-digit performance. But I'm not chalking this up as a hit, but I'm not chalking it up as a miss either because of Nick Foles' injury, leaving very, early in the game. And that was kind of one of the biggest reasons for playing D.D. Westbrook was because of his connection with Nick Foles, Nick Foles' affinity to throw to the slot. And, in game 3 of the preseason, D.D. had 7 of Nick Foles' 10 targets. So that was, a lot of the main basis for why D.D. Westbrook was going to be played, and then you add in the fact that he was only $4,800 on Draftkings. That's exactly where you want the potential for a high volume receiver to be, and then get you, the 14, 15 fantasy points. But again, I would have liked to have seen him get to there just on receiving alone, even if it was like how Tyler Boyd did, 8 for 60 or 6 for 80 in some sort of way like that, get into the 12 to 13 range and then score the touchdown on top of it to bump up over 18, 20 points, something like that. But because of Gardner Minshew playing, I'm not counting that as a miss because there's no way that we could have known that Nick Foles was going to get hurt that early in the game. He could have been hurt in the 4th quarter, and D.D. Westbrook at that point could have already been, close to what Tyler Boyd did and then the touchdown. So that would have been a very different game and a very different conversation about D.D. Westbrook right now. So that's where we are on D.D. Coming at the tight end position, Evan Engram, New York Giants tight end, 21.7% owned here, and 31.6 fantasy points. That was above and beyond my expectations for him. My process on Evan Engram this week was I knew that he was going to be targeted, and I knew that he would be one of the focal points of the New York Giants pass attack, especially in a game where they were going to be trailing almost immediately against Dallas. You look at the spread. Vegas had Dallas as a 7-point favorite in a relatively high scoring game. It was, I believe, a mid to high 40s over under. So that told me that, they expected Dallas to score and put up points. So New York was going to have to, throw to get back into it, which kind of mitigated Saquon, which is why I kind of moved away from Saquon in favor of Christian McCaffrey as well too, but also looked towards Evan Engram. And I originally had Zach Ertz in there for a Wentz Ertz stack, but moved away from that, pivoted to Engram because I believe Engram was going to have the same or similar production to Zach Ertz, but it wasn't going to match the salary difference that was between the two, about a 12 or 1,300 salary difference. But it paid off putting Evan Engram in here, 11 receptions on 14 targets. The second most targeted player, I believe, on the week behind only Jamison Crowder. Finished with 116 receiving yards, a touchdown, and got you the bonus as well, bumping you over 30. A fantastic output from Evan Engram. And the only thing that I'm going to say, the only negative to this type of game is this is going to raise his price, which it'll be interesting to see how much it raises his price in week 2, and if he continues to have success, obviously not maybe in the 30 plus or the 25 point plus, but if he continues to have 15 to 20 point games in that kind of range, it's going to be interesting to see what his price gets vaulted to. If he starts flirting with the $6,000 or more range and kind of gets up there with the other elite tight ends, especially as we get into bye weeks. And other teams have Thursday or Monday night or Sunday night games that they're not on the main slate. It'll be interesting to see where Engram gets priced at as the season goes on, and if he continues to have this success. So that's where we were at on Evan Engram. That was a big time hit, and I'm glad I pivoted away from Ertz. So yeah, good job, Evan Engram. Last on this list is my defense, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, 4.3% owned, which actually means that I was the only person in this double up to play Tampa Bay. And while it was the San Francisco 49ers, the other defense in this same game that drastically outscored Tampa Bay, I had a what I think to be a solid process for choosing the Buccaneers defense. Number one, I like to look for sub $3,000 defenses. I think defense is a position that you can definitely pay down on and get some nice ROI from a lot of the sub 3,000, the 2,500 plus or minus a $200 or $300 defenses in that range, and get nice ROIs on them if you choose them correctly and know what to look for. So what I was looking for was, I saw Tampa Bay, they were sitting at 2,200, so automatically a 3 or 4 time ROI would have been in that 6 to 8 or 9 range. So anything in that range would have been fantastic for me already. So that was my baseline. They obviously hit that double-digit points with 12, a 6-time ROI, and that's above and beyond what I was expecting. And I think that's also kind of helped lower raise the ceiling of my lineup, because I was able to get points out of my defense, a low defense, and which allowed me to spend elsewhere. So 1 sack, 1 pick that ended up being a pick 6, and a fumble recovery as well too, and then 14 to 20 points allowed. Even though the San Francisco 49ers scored 31, 2 of those were pick 6s, so that's not against the Tampa Bay defense that they scored that. So they only allowed 17 points. So it was an additional point as well too for allowing 14 to 20 points. So really solid production from them. And the reason why I chose Tampa Bay was because of when you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, historically with the San Francisco 49ers throughout his career with the Niners, he has had 5 away games, 4 of which were outside the state of California. 1 was at the Rams, so I don't really count that as an away game because it didn't really, it's like if Pittsburgh were to travel to like Philly, or the Bills played the Giants this week or something like that. Not really an away game. So the other 4 games where he had to travel outside the state of California, Jimmy Garoppolo averaged over 1 interception per game and only 1 touchdown per game, and then also averaged 2 to 3 sacks per game as well too. And then when you look at the Buccaneers last year at home, averaged 3 or more sacks per game at home. And then you also have to include the fact that the Buccaneers defense is, in my opinion, drastically improved from what it was in 2018. Levante David he played this week. They added Ndamukong Suh, even though they lost Gerald McCoy, so that's kind of one for one. But the presence of that big nose tackle there, we know what Suh is, and he's a monster beast, and just the presence at the very worst. The biggest addition in my opinion, was Hargreave, the guy who actually had the pick six. And he got injured in 2018 in week 1. 2018 was out all of last year, and so he was finally back. This was his first game in a year back, and I think that was the biggest piece that Tampa Bay was missing last year, and one of the biggest reasons why they were so bad against the pass and why you wanted to attack the Buccaneers defense in DraftKings in your lineups last year through the passing game. And I think that's going to be one of the reasons why the Buccaneers aren't going to be that defense that you automatically go down and you look at, oh, who's playing Tampa Bay this week? Let me play their opposing offensive passing, the quarterback and the receivers. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're going to have to think a little bit more about the Buccaneers defense. They're still not great, obviously, but they're going to be drastically improved from what they were last year. And then you add in the fact that they drafted Devin White in the first round too. This was a really solid defense that I think a lot of people were just saying because of last year's numbers, oh, they're not that good. They're still what they were last year. They're horrible, and Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have a field day with them. That wasn't what I was expecting from this game, and it turned out to be pretty right. Garoppolo struggled for the most part, minus a Kittle touchdown coming back, but that still would have been okay because they would have scored in the low 20s, which is still enough to score fantasy points from points allowed. But Garoppolo did struggle, got sacked, had the pick six as well too. That was exactly what I was looking for from Tampa Bay, and what they were allowing there. So that was the rundown of my DraftKings cash lineup. Like I said, I plan on doing this every single week, looking at my process and understanding where I went wrong, what I did right, continuing to do the right, mitigating and refining the wrong. And I think that should be a part of everybody's process when they're looking at DraftKings and they want to be profitable here on a weekly basis throughout the entire season. So this is what I'm going to be doing every single week. And then as we move throughout the week, I'm going to be posting videos as well too, talking about my lineup, what players I'm locking in, where I'm kind of struggling, my final cash game lineup as well too. So I encourage everybody to please like this video if you liked the information here and want to continue to see more. Leave a comment down below with your DraftKings lineup and how you guys fared. What was your process on some of your players? I would love to hear guys in cash and GPP that played guys like Sammy Watkins, Deshaun Jackson, everything like that. Like, did you have a good process in your eyes for those? Obviously, the results were very much there, but what was the process? I'm looking for the process, not just the results-based analysis here. So yeah, I would love to see what you guys put out this week and how profitable you guys were on your ROIs for week 1 as we move into week 2 here. So leave that comment down below in the comment section, and then also just make sure that you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button as well too, so then you can always be alerted whenever these videos drop, and then watch them and comment and like and just continue to talk with me and hopefully learn a little bit from me. And I would love to learn some stuff from you as well too. Like I said, I'm not very good at this stuff, at least in my eyes. I'm still very novice at the game and trying to understand and build and refine my own process for selecting players on a weekly basis, but I'm committed to it. This is really fun. It's really addicting, and I would love to talk with other people about it too. So thank you guys so much for watching. We will catch you guys next week.